Talk about without further ado, we can finally talk about 50 Shades Freed. Again, this is the conclusion to the erotic franchise by E.L. James. We're going to try to keep it PG-13 over here, but that's going to be fairly easy, I think, to do, because you know what? This movie could, I say, be PG-13 in a way. This was very tame for what you expect these movies to be.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing, like with some of the setups, obviously I'll let you do a plot description in a second, but like with some of the like the scenes in this movie, you know, like the action sequences and stuff, it's like, hell, this mirrors like Taken 4 more so than it does a 50 Shades movie.
Oh, I love how you say action sequences, and all I'm thinking about is just how poorly shot they are, like every other bad action movie. But instead of like that generic action music, we got pop songs to it.
Oh, you got the R&B. There's so much to talk. There's so much wrong with this film that it would only have felt better if, like, when I was watching it in the theater, the projection broke. You know what I mean? That's how bad this film is. Let's get into it. Joseph, why don't you give a very brief description, because it's going to undoubtedly be brief.
Okay.
Of 50 Shades Freed.
So we are here, ladies and gentlemen. We have finally made it to the climax of 50 Shades, the final chapter. Anastasia and Christian, they finally settled their differences and they got married. And the only thing they have to worry about in their lives is Jack Hyde, Anastasia's old boss, wants to basically kidnap Anastasia and keep her for himself.
Indeed.
And that's it.
That you got it. I mean, there's very little to talk about with this. There's one point in the movie when you really think that, like, Elena, Christian's mistress, Mrs. Robinson, as she's sometimes referred, you think that she's going to come back, but I guess they couldn't afford Kim Basinger again to come back.
I think she just realized, like, what these movies are and decided, nope.
Because I've never read the book, so I can't tell you, like, if there was more to the third book than this. But this is a very slight movie.
I don't mean to be this guy, but I watched the trailer again after seeing the movie, and there's scenes that are cut out of the final movie that were in the trailer. So, you know, all you DC fans out there complaining about Justice League not having, like, your Zack Snyder cut, well, now you have another movie to complain about, I guess, if you want, about getting a director's cut of.
Yeah, no kidding. Because, I mean, first off, just to talk about, like, some of the other outlying factors of this, this is the shortest 50 Shades movie by a considerable amount. This movie without credits is about an hour and 36 minutes.
Yeah.
Where the previous two were a little bit over 2 hours. Mm-hmm. They were a little bit over 2 hours. And I'm not complaining, believe me. I'm not complaining at all. This was definitely...
You better not be.
I was glad this was short, because what I did, because of the snow this weekend, I saw both 50 Shades Freed and the 1517 to Paris in one day. I saw them in one day. I went in the morning to see 1517 to Paris, and then I caught 50 Shades Freed in IMAX, call that the climax in IMAX. And I did see it. I saw it in IMAX, and let me tell you, I don't know why the hell they put this thing in IMAX.
It was in Dolby as well, so, you know, I mean, if you really want to
RPX it was too.
Yeah, RPX. If you really want to hear this soundtrack at, like, you know, on great stereo, by all means.
I love the IMAX screen. I like the IMAX setting. It kind of violates my principle of, like, sit twice as far back as the screen is wide. At least the IMAX theater that I go to is kind of smaller auditorium than I think most IMAX screens are. Mm-hmm. But, like, it was a limited IMAX release. It was only in a couple hundred locations. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know why this needs to be an IMAX. Like, there's no... I mean, there's a couple, like I said...
You can see all the sweat, Steve.
That's true, too. I mean, there's a couple, like, you know, like, very... I use the term loosely, action sequences. But at the same time... It's not enhanced, you know, like, I didn't like Justice League, but at least that felt like...
That has a purpose for being in IMAX.
Of course.
You have special effects, you have these grand scale action sequences. Here, the action sequences, it's like 5 seconds long, and they, like, end abruptly.
Yeah, why do you need a... I don't understand why you need a romance movie in IMAX. The only good scene I will say that was in IMAX, I will admit it was a pretty good scene in IMAX, was when Christian Grey throws Anastasia the keys to his Audi, and, like, she's swerving, trying to avoid Jack Hyde, who's coming, who's, like, tailing them in the SUV. She's, like, swerving through traffic, like, and she's flashing her lights at somebody. Like, that would actually look kind of nice in IMAX. I'm not gonna lie. That was fun.
That would look like a car commercial in IMAX, though.
It really did. They could... cut and edit that.
Everything in this movie is either a car commercial or a travel agency being like, "Can you sell Aspen to people for us in your movie?"
With that beautiful, like, there was that one scene too when they're like in the tub together, and it's like the window is so big, and like
I'm expecting like the film just to slow down, just be like, "Aspen, book your trip today."
No, it's true. These movies feel like there's so much to talk about. It's like I feel like we're not even like adhering to any structure, but these movies feel like glorified commercials.
To be fair, there's no structure to this movie.
That's very true.
It's like we're just gonna throw together just something. Here's a basic plot. Like the plot I gave really only occurs about 15 minutes in this movie. Yeah. That's about it. The rest of it is just them on a honeymoon, going from place to place, montage after montage. And then Kristen's dungeon playroom.
Some very faux like pregnancy subplot
that goes nowhere.
That does nothing. That's nothing.
A cheating subplot that goes nowhere.
That goes nowhere.
Two cheating subplots. I'm sorry, that both go nowhere.
Yeah, and now here's the thing. I have been frustrated with this 50 Shades franchise from the beginning, and it has nothing to do with quality. It's somewhat to do with quality, but here just kind of an external sense too. I was really hoping when they greenlit this franchise, these movies, I was really hoping, I was crossing my fingers, I was really, really hoping that the Universal would make these movies NC-17 and no children under 17, the rating above R for people that don't know. That means the difference is like R-rated movies, you can get a minor into an R-rated movie if you're a parent over 21. If you're somebody over 21, you can get a younger person into an R-rated movie. NC-17, you cannot. And in a lot of cases, they actually have like when Showgirls...
I was about to bring up Showgirls, yeah.
Paul Verhoeven's movie, a lot of cases, they'll have paid theater guards outside of the theater, so you can't even sneak in. So it's very strict. Now, the thing was, the reason I said with NC-17, a lot of studios don't want to take on that rating. No. Because a lot of studios...
Because then the single moms can't bring their kids.
Well, of course, there's that. There's obviously that. But then there's the factor, too, that, like, advertising is restricted on television. It's very restricted. Advertising is limited. Marketing is hurt. Some theaters won't carry them. But here's what I was saying, though. And Universal could have been bold in doing this because you know what? The fans would have seen it anyway. The fans would have kept tabs on it. This is not like an indie sex drama. You know what I mean? It's not based off of anything like Shame.
This isn't any French film, like where... No. Sex drama. No,
it's not like Shame, the Steve McQueen film that was NC-17. It's not like that. This had franchise potential. It was source material, and then they blew it. And all you did by doing that, I think, is you cheapened the sex in the movie. You cheapened the BDSM in the movie as well. And then all you did was aggravate fans who knew that this was not material that could adequately be shown in an R-rated movie.
And from the looks of the box office, any people who didn't read the book came in, saw that first one, and just slowly faded away from the others.
Yes. And there's, like I said, there's so much wrong with this. I will admit, though, I'm going to confess and say this. I don't know if you agree with this, Joe, but I'll say this. This movie is a smidge better. And maybe I would even use the E word. It's a smidge more entertaining than 50 Shades Darker. I know that's not saying much. You're going to
hate me, but I disagree.
Are you serious now? Really?
I
disagree. That's good. No.
I found 50 Shades Darker to be so stupid and dumb that it was at least like that dumb, like entertaining. Like, like this is so outlandishly bad. It's at least entertaining.
I found 50. This is another word I don't use too often. I found 50 Shades Darker not only bad, but offensively bad. Like, I'm serious. In a lot of different respects. I even started my review going back to 50 Shades Darker. I said, I'm sure everyone who made and acted in 50 Shades Darker are wonderful people, but they have teamed up to make a stomach-turning excuse of a movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like 50 Shades of Grey, the first film, was not amazing. It was mediocre. 50 Shades Darker doubled down. Look, it was awful.
Even though I'm saying this is better, this is like me saying what I did in the bathroom yesterday is better than what I did in the bathroom
today. That's exactly
today.
how I explain it. That's precisely how I explain it.
It doesn't make a difference.
The thing that kills me, though, or that killed me about 50 Shades Darker was that this was a movie, too, that, like, it insulted, on top of already aggravating fans to begin with the way the movies have turned out to lesser quality, couple that then, and then 50 Shades Darker, there's this whole subplot that involves, or that talks about, again, going back to like Christian Grey's mistress.
Backstory.
Yes. So, and essentially what it boils down to, I'm not going to get into it because we still got to talk about, the depths of 50 Shades Freed, but at the same time, the 50 Shades Darker, they're talking about this mistress subplot and how Christian Grey was like corrupted. He had his innocence corrupted by this woman. So now this BDSM culture, it's something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I found really offensively bad about this thing.
Well, here's the thing. This whole BDSM, like, culture you're saying, like, is being bashed on in the movies, they flip-flop it from time to time. From times it's like, no, it's like, it can spice up your sex life. Other times it's like, no, this is wrong. What he's doing is crazy. It's like, make up your mind.
Yes, the movie doesn't know how to portray it. I'm still only about 70% convinced that Jamie Dornan, who plays Christian Grey, and Dakota Johnson, who plays Anastasia in the film, I'm still only about 70% convinced that they are actual human beings. I think they're robots.
I remember reading all the articles when the first film came out saying they hated each other when filming, like on the first movie and everything. They were very uncomfortable and everything, and it shows. It truly shows because, like, just the line delivery they give to one another, the chemistry they have is not there.
I was arguing with a friend of mine who like kind of likes these movies on a guilty pleasure level, which I don't know how you can enjoy them otherwise. But like she was saying though how they did have how Dornan. She's like, the one thing that I do like is that both Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson do have chemistry. I'm like, where? They feel uncomfortable.
They feel like a brick wall in a wooden fence.
And that's a good way. That's a good way to put it. But I'll say this too. There's also a reason that these two have not gotten many major acting jobs outside of this franchise. Jamie Dornan's done a little bit. They tried to give Dakota Johnson How to Be Single, but I would say
I hated that movie.
I didn't. It was mediocre in my opinion, but with that though, it wasn't her fault in my opinion.
No, by no means it's not.
No, but it wasn't a good movie. But like I'm telling you, there's a reason you don't see Dornan and Johnson in other movies. There's a reason you don't see them, I believe, because they're not good actors. They're really not. I don't even think it's just the material. Granted, the writing's bad, but they bring nothing. They bring nothing. Like you cannot even trust them to spice it up in a way.
It's like, Jamie, can you look like you're happy to see Anastasia? And he gives the same expression as if he is angry at Anastasia. He is literally a robot, like Steve said. When it comes to Dakota Johnson, I will admit this. The one thing I like about this movie is that there are scenes where she finally puts her foot down and goes off on Christian.
Yes.
And I was like, it is about time. It took us 3 movies and a marriage to get here, but we finally got it. She finally puts her foot down, puts him in his place. But once again, just like these subplots, doesn't get brought up, doesn't matter in the end.
It's true. If you're just joining right now, Sleepless with Steve on FM 89, me, Steve Pulaski, and my co-host Joe Viso talking 50 Shades Freed. We'll address one more thing. We'll cut the break really fast, and we'll come back to talk more about the depths and the climax, if you will, of 50 Shades Freed. But no, you are absolutely right, though. These movies, and we'll talk about this after the break again going forward, but these movies are so... The last two especially, I would say 50 Shades Darker and this one, they are so problematic in the way that they portray the lack of like agency in the female character Anastasia. I mean, this bodyguard, many scenes. I mean, just the fact that in this movie, this bodyguard follows her everywhere she goes by Christian's orders.
Christian Grey security team.
I want to return with this quote from Marianne Johansson, friend of mine, good film critic, love reading her reviews, always brings a good story, a good perspective, good tone when she writes. Can't recommend her at Flick Philosopher enough. Flick Philosopher spelled Philosopher. She writes on 50 Shades Freed, just a quick quote, I love this. She says, "My 50 Shades of Grey fantasy. Anastasia Steele gets a restraining order against Christian Grey, writes a tell-all book about him, and becomes a #MeToo, #Time's Up heroine. Sexy." I love that. That's like one of those things. And I saw that the day before I went to go see 50 Shades Freed. So that was one of those, I hate that when I read. It was one of those situations where it's like, you know what? I could write 10 paragraphs and it would not be as good as that sentence. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm like, my God, that is so accurate. I would love that movie too. Anyway, going back into 50 Shades Freed. So we were talking about how there's a very disturbing and problematic the film's like view of women and this relationship, and this core relationship between Christian and Anastasia is problematic on a lot of levels, and it's problematic in a lot. Case in point, like there's an instance I believe in the first movie, 50 Shades of Grey. There's an instance.
I'll try remembering this.
Yeah, no kidding, right? But like, there's an instance where she uses the safe word when they're making love, and she uses the safe word, and he like tries to push her further and says like, "No, I promise you'll like it." Like that's not cool.
That is not cool.
That's not cool. You know what I mean? That, especially in this day and age now, when like people are finally waking up and realizing like the boundaries of consent and relationships.
I don't care about spoiling anything, but it occurs again in this movie.
It does,
and it's with a part of the body that can be very fragile if you try to do what Christian Grey does to Anastasia in this movie. And he's throughout this entire movie franchise, he's always been childish. To me, this is the movie where he felt the most childish. In that scene right there, it was like, I just want to punch him in the face.
This guy's not a grown-up. And the fact that he's become like this contemporary 2010 sex symbol is so awful. Like that's the thing that I really don't understand. And here's what I'm going to say, okay? And maybe some people think I'm not being fair. I got a couple comments this weekend because I did write this in my review. But I'm going to say this too. You know what? You know what aggravates me? And I know it might not be the same people that are like, going and like retweeting and, writing these articles about the, the hashtag Me Too movement with a lot of validity behind it. But the thing is that, what aggravates me is we talk about how much we hate the way like women are portrayed in movies and stuff like that, and the way how very shallow they are, and then you got like abusive relationships like this that are glorified. We talk about how much we hate this, yet 50 Shades Freed makes $40 million.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Get Hard, that stupid, not maybe not the same severity, but like that Will Ferrell movie. We hate, a lot of people love this, to always say, and it's true, they hate racism, and it's disgusting, it's a deplorable way to look at, but then we'll give this stupid Will Ferrell movie, which is awful, Get Hard, we'll propel that to #1 at the box office. I don't get that. You know what I mean? I don't get that. And like, the way that this movie will cut it up and sell it, like 50 Shades Freed, it's really upsetting.
It's always baffled me, and thank God, like, this movie, from what it looks like what the box office was already, that it will never touch the amount of money Wonder Woman made. And I'm happy. I'm happy that is true.
That is true.
When I saw the box office of the first movie, and then I saw the movie, I'm like, I really hope like this isn't a mega franchise for Universal. I really hope it's not. And I'm glad to see it's been dwindling down, basically.
Yes, it's definitely not. It's still popular, but it's not at the height it was.
This is not empowering to women. Just because, like, she can give consent and, like, all this other stuff and throughout the movie to Christian or whatever it is. I never saw what was truly empowering about this character compared to, like, any other female character like Furiosa, Wonder Woman. I mean, there's other ones too, like Meryl Streep in The Post.
There's some good ones there.
Like there are, like, you have the action ones and you have the drama ones. That's just like, these are characters I feel like empower women. Not Anastasia Steele. She would never come to my mind.
Can I give you two others too?
Go ahead. The more the merrier.
I'll give you three. I'll give you three actually. You could talk about Lady Bird, Saoirse Ronan. You could talk about Sally Hawkins in Shape of Water. And you can talk
Frances McDormand.
You could Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards. You could talk about Jessica Chastain in Molly's Game.
Oh my God, how did I forget Molly's Game?
You're stacking them high over here. I mean, there's been arguably, I would make the argument last year, or at least maybe there have been movies with more credible and more powerful female characters than male characters. I would make that argument that there have been way more movies, better movies too. And then you get schlock like this that makes a ton of money. I was going to say, just going back and talking about it from a box office standpoint too, 50 Shades of Grey, the first movie capped out its domestic gross, just what it made in the US, 166 million. 50 Shades Darker capped out at about 114 million. 50 Shades Freed is currently at about 41 million. So it might close at maybe probably a little bit less than
cross the 100 million mark. It totally could.
It might fall short, I think.
The point is, it's just like, you look at Wonder Woman, what it opened with and whatnot, and you look at all these other movies that are at least getting recognition, like Molly's Game did, and Shape of Water, and all these other movies, 3 Billboards, and it's just like, thank God those are getting recognition. And if there's one time I appreciate the Razzies, is when they point out how dumb these movies are.
Yeah, because these will always scrape up. But again, going back to it's hard to talk explicitly about 50 Shades Freed because there's not a ton that with which you can draw from just in maybe a very generalized critical sense. Like I mentioned at the top of the hour, I said there's not a lot of sex in this movie.
There's not.
Now I'm not complaining because the sex scenes have never been good in these movies.
No,
they've never been good. Never been erotic.
Anytime they've used like some like tool used in the BDSM community, it's very underwhelming. I remember in the second one, it was like a tool that he wrapped around her ankles, and you're like, well, what's this gonna do? And all it was is just to keep her legs apart. It's like, that's it.
It's true, and I mean, there's nothing here erotic about these movies. And I counted 2 or 3 sex scenes throughout this whole movie. It's really about them as a couple, and then this Jack Hyde character played by Eric Johnson,
who's like a comic book James Bond villain to the extreme.
Yes, especially in that scene when they're on the bridge. You know what I mean? And he calls her.
Yeah.
With Christian Grey's sister in tow. Yeah, I mean, it's so cartoon.
Like he starts off the movie by planting a bomb in the Grey Industry building.
Yeah, it starts a fire or something like that.
It's just like, okay. He's a terrorist. Like, this is how crazy it's. Why? I don't know.
No logic to this.
And of course he's let go. Why? I don't know. Maybe, and he's just rich and white. I don't know.
That's a good point you bring up too, because it's like they find him, they identify him on the security camera that he was the one who started the fire. Yet the guy's free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I guess that's where the 50 Shades Freed part comes.
No, the 50 Shades Freed title comes from us being freed, Steve.
I know. There was definitely a liberation.
It's like, thank God. Don't make the spin-off movie like you did with the book, where we see it from Christian Grey's point of view, because they ain't gonna be different.
But I said too. I said from besides the poor acting and the I think terrible lead actors. I think the rotten core where this franchise stinks the worst stems from its horrible sex scenes. I think that the way that in this movie too. God, I'll tell you right now, it annoyed me in the first 2 movies, but here it was like critical mass. I hate the scores of these movies. The music in these movies sucks so much.
On their own, the soundtracks could be fine. Where they use them in the film, it just doesn't make sense, and it's annoying.
They made me I remember I think it was the first movie. I think it was the Sick of Weekend. The movie made me really dislike and get sick of Weekend. The singer.
I love that song a lot, but yeah, hearing it in the movie,
I hate that
it was
song.
just like
I can't. I don't think that's a good song to be. And don't get me. Like I said before, I
like The Weeknd a lot too.
I still listen. Starboy for me is in weekly rotation, but I hate that song. I mean that song from the movie, and none of these songs stick out. They're generic as can be. They sound like they all recycle the same synths and the same what I'm talking about here, like trap soul melodies. You know what I mean? They're very interchangeable. There's nothing there in a music sense.
I'm trying to remember because they remade a song, like somebody else re-sung a song basically. Oh, I Feel Good. Da-na-na-na-na-na.
Yeah.
That was used in this, and it sounded terrible.
No, it does. It's an awful soundtrack.
The worst part about it is that you're watching the opening credits, and then you just see the name Danny Elfman, composer, and you're just like, no, Danny, why?
Danny Elfman, one of the best, if not, like I said, up there with John Williams, one of the best. John Williams, dude. Everybody likes to say Hans Zimmer. I think Zimmer's a little bit too samey, as good as he is. I think a lot of his stuff sounds the same. Elfman's one of the best composers working today. Mm-hmm. He makes an amazing.
I love his Batman score.
That's what we always come back to. I mean, anything. I told you the best. One of the best twosomes in movies for a long stretch was Tim Burton and Danny Elfman.
Yeah,
those two could click together like no other.
Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, all that.
Absolutely, you name. And like I said, going back to the Batman movies. I mean, Elfman made that in a lot of ways. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Seeing that music by Danny Elfman in the beginning, and then for something like this that doesn't deserve.
I was like, for once, I'm like, let me try finding the original soundtrack and listen to it while I'm watching the movie. It just didn't register with me if it was playing or not because of how many pop songs are in this movie.
I'm sure. I can't imagine listening to it like a playlist.
Yeah.
You know, it's not good. It's bad. It fits the rest of the movie.
It fits the rest of the movie. Unless if that's what Denny Elfman was trying to do, is just make a bad score to fit a bad movie, then he did his job perfect.
Anything else that stuck out to you though? Anything else that stuck out to you that you really want to talk about, like as a talking point for this? Because I feel like the ending.
Like, I don't mean to give it away, but this is both Universal made this. Yes. Universal owns Fast and Furious. Some executive saw how Furious 7 ended and was like, you know what? This franchise needs a montage at the ending showing the great adventure of Anastasia and Christian Grey, how they met and how they got to where they're at today. And we're going to play Love Me Like You Do all over it. And it was like, wow. They obviously saw what they did in Furious 7, and what they did in Furious 7 was for a reason. What they did here was like, we gotta pad out this runtime.
No, it's true. And it ends somewhat abruptly, I would argue, too.
It does. It just ends like the first film, where it's just basically a door closes, and it's the end of the movie. You get the same thing here.
And I think it's part of the reason, too, is like we're used to these movies being longer. You know what I mean? We're used to these movies kind of being a little bit more, not for the better, but like we're used to them being fleshed out more. You know what I mean? Maybe too much in a lot of ways. So to see it end, I mean, like I said, I ain't complaining. It got me out of the theater a lot quicker, but it's like, I mean, at the end of this though, I was really, I mean, it felt liberating. Let me tell you, liberating to be done with this. I got to ask you, you saw this movie. How many people were in your theater?
Not that many.
Not that many
as I thought it would be.
And I had to sit could you test the response or going?
I had to sit in one of the front few rows, basically where it's not rising up, it's just front row and it's just all on the same level. Only because it's just like I didn't want to sit near people during this movie. I don't want to sit near anybody near this movie. I would say there was about 4 to 6 people in each row, and there was at least 12 to 14 seats in those rows. Okay. And it's like, it wasn't too packed though. Like it didn't stretch out all the way to the back of the theater. Everybody was spaced out. It wasn't as packed as I thought it would be on a Friday night. Oh yeah, because I imagine Saturday and Sunday it probably would have been more packed.
Yeah, I was gonna say Friday you had the issue with the weather. And
that's another thing too. It was like Friday you had the weather situation.
There were 10 people only in my IMAX showing, which is the sparsest.
Come on, man. Even fans wouldn't pay that much money to see this in IMAX.
No, and like the other thing too, I just saw it in IMAX again because it worked out time wise for me after because 15-17 to Paris ended at like 1:20, and then this started at 1:30.
I'm sorry you had to pay money for this.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. Like I said, I would have had to. Unless I would have snuck in, I would have had to pay anyway because I used MoviePass for 15-17.
True.
So like I would have had to pay anyway, even if I didn't sneak in. But with this, I didn't mind. But you know what's funny is like this is an IMAX now. It's gonna be an IMAX until Wednesday. Until
Black Panther's gonna show up.
Black Panther's gonna lose all its theaters to Black Panther.
Thank God. It's gonna kick it right out of that thing and be like, we own this.
Yeah, because Marvel. Yeah, I was gonna say Marvel's gonna expel it. I would be surprised if it has. Because I don't know if there's
at least one showtime.
I don't even know if there's like theaters. There might be. Are there theaters that have like multiple IMAX theaters?
No, I've never seen one.
It's usually just the one. I was gonna say I doubt 50 Shades Freed has any IMAX theaters going into this week.
The AMC I go to from time to time has one Dolby screenings, but IMAX. That's it.
Really?
Nothing else. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has the other standard screenings, but no other special screens.
I wonder if, like, in California, it's different or something. You know what I mean? If they
the
have
whole IMAX theater.
Because, I mean, if they had multiple, then they could make the argument that it's like, okay, one IMAX theater gets, 50 Shades Freed this weekend, and the other gets it on Black Panther. But even if that's the case, I don't even think it's gonna fight it. You know what I mean? Like, would you want to fight Marvel on that if you're Universal? You know what I mean? I would just
unless if you had Jurassic World or Fast and Furious, no.
I just bend over and let them take it. You know what I mean? I'd be like, whatever. I'm like, we got the 1 week. It really didn't do anything for us. So it's like, good luck on that one. You know what I'm saying? But so you were talking about the ending though. The ending of this movie is really atrocious.
No. It's just like everything else in these movies. It wraps up very quickly. And Darker, at least I felt like had an ending. It was like, okay, I feel like we're getting to the end of a movie.
Yeah.
We didn't build up to anything, but I feel like we're wrapping something up at least.
Like you said there, like we didn't build to anything, but we're wrapping up.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up. It's just like, well, whatever we tried building up here, it's at least coming to an end. This is just like, they have like one conversation, something like traumatic happens, montage, playroom, end of movie.
Pretty much. Pretty much. That's kind of the conclusion of 50 Shades. Yeah. 50 Shades Freed in a nutshell.
One last thing, too. And do you want to start doing our ratings?
Oh, we'll take one more quick break.
One more quick break? Okay. One last thing I want to say. I'm just astonished. We have 3 movies here. And if somebody would have asked me, what are the plot to these movies? I don't know if I could remember the other 2. And I don't know if, like, a year or 2 from now, I could even remember this one. I couldn't. It is sad to say we have a trilogy where I don't even know if, like, the trilogy had an overarching story.
I don't really think it did outside of like the progression of Christian and Anastasia's relationship. I don't think we got anything.
It's literally just the same thing each movie. They hate each other for a while. They love each other. They fight. They love each other. It's the same thing across all 3 movies, and then there's some outlandish plot with a villain.
Yeah, with some alternate character or something like that. Yeah, because you're right. It's like, that one point, I know it's like one of those things that a lot of people complain about and stuff as being a movie trope, but it does get annoying, is like there's always a point in romance movies where like the characters have a fight, then they go off in their separate corners, and they whine, and they complain, and they cry, and they lament, and then
the guy runs after her while she's boarding the plane and getting
and they regroup.
He runs through the airport, even though you can't do that post 9/11.
yeah, that's what it is. This movie, it's like that happens like 3 times.
God, yes.
And then and like you said, you were talking about too, kind of like Christian being childish here. There's a whole thing that's made into an event about how offended he gets because she doesn't want to change her name. Anastasia doesn't want to change her last name from Steele to Gray on the company emailing list.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean?
Grow up.
Like this is like the King Petty over here. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable in a lot of ways.
One more thing, I won't give it away, but the plot twist in this movie is insanely stupid.
That's what we're calling it?
Sure.
That's what we're calling it.
You can tell with that plot twist, it just confirmed it's fan fiction. This has always been fan fiction from the start of the Twilight series.
That's exactly what this is. I actually think I called it that in my review too.